Let me describe a scene you've probably lived. You're in a relationship. Something she does bothers you. Maybe it's how she talks to a certain male friend. Maybe it's how she behaves when she goes out. Maybe it's something she said that didn't sit right. And you notice it. You feel it. That little twist in your gut. That discomfort. But you don't say anything. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You tell yourself she should just know that this isn't okay. Weeks pass. She does it again and again. Each time, that twist gets a little tighter, the resentment builds. You start keeping score in your head, but still, you say nothing. You're a nice guy. You don't want to be controlling. You don't want to start a fight, so you swallow it. You endure. You hope she'll somehow figure out that you're unhappy without you having to say anything. And then one day, maybe she does the thing one more time. Maybe something small triggers it. You explode. All that stored resentment comes pouring out. You're angry, you're accusatory, you're listing grievances from 3 months ago, and she looks at you like you've lost your mind. Because from her perspective, everything was fine until this moment. She had no idea you were upset. You never told her, and now you're the crazy one. You're the one who overreacted. You're the one apologizing by the end of the night. Sound familiar? This is the cycle most men live in. Silent suffering, then explosion, then apology. And it destroys relationships. It destroys respect. It destroys you. Today we're going to talk about how to actually set boundaries with a woman. Not in theory, in practice. How to communicate what you will and won't accept in a way that doesn't blow up in your face. How to establish your terms early so you never have to explode later. Let's get into it. First, let me explain why men fail at this so consistently. It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding about how women process information. Men think in explicit communication. If something is wrong, you say it's wrong. If you don't say anything, nothing is wrong. Simple, direct, logical. But women operate on a different channel. Women are constantly reading signals. They're picking up on tone, body language, context, reaction patterns. They're building a mental model of what's acceptable to you based on hundreds of tiny data points. And here's the critical part. Your silence is a signal. When she does something and you say nothing, she doesn't think, he's probably bothered but being polite. She thinks, he's fine with this. Your passivity communicates acceptance. Your tolerance communicates approval. Every time you let something slide without response, you're telling her, loudly and clearly, you are honest, that this behavior is within bounds. You're setting a boundary whether you realize it or not. And the boundary you're setting is, I have no boundaries. This is why the explosion feels so unfair to her. You've been signaling for months that everything is fine. You've been approving behavior through your silence. And then suddenly, you flip the script and tell her she's been violating boundaries you never communicated. From her perspective, you change the rules without warning, and she's not entirely wrong. So here's the first principle. Boundaries must be established early. Not after she's crossed them 50 times. Not after you've built up a reservoir of resentment. Early. Ideally, before the relationship even becomes serious. The first weeks and months of dating are when she's collecting information about who you are. She's figuring out what kind of man she's dealing with, what you'll tolerate, what you won't, what makes you happy, what makes you withdraw. She's testing, whether consciously or not, and this is your window. This is when you communicate. Through words, through reactions, through stories, through behavior, exactly what kind of relationship you're signing up for. If you miss this window, you can still set boundaries later, but it's much harder. Because now you're not establishing terms, you're renegotiating terms, and renegotiation always involves conflict. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you're the kind of man who's not comfortable with your girlfriend having close male friends who she texts constantly and meets for coffee alone. You have every right to feel that way. Some men are fine with it. You're not. Neither position is wrong. It's about what works for you. Now, the wrong way to handle this. Say nothing, hope she reads your mind, silently fume every time she mentions grabbing lunch with Jake, and then 6 months later, during a fight about something else, suddenly scream about how she's always with that guy and it's disrespectful. That's the explosion model. It makes you look insecure, controlling, and unstable, all at once. The right way. Communicate your values early, indirectly, before it even becomes an issue. Maybe you're texting in the early stages and she mentions something about her male friend. You don't attack. You don't interrogate, you share a perspective. You might say something like, "Yeah, I've never really been big on the close opposite sex friendship thing once I'm in a relationship. I've just seen it cause problems, but everyone's different." That's it. Casual, non-accusatory, just a window into your worldview. What have you done? You've planted a flag. You've told her, without drama, without confrontation, that this is part of your value system. Now she has information. Now she can decide, before getting deeply involved, whether she's compatible with that. If she's a woman who values those friendships highly, she might self-select out. Good. She wasn't right for you anyway. If she's flexible, she'll adjust her behaviour because she knows where you stand. Either outcome is better than silent resentment followed by explosion. This technique, communicating boundaries through stories, perspectives, and casual revelations rather than direct confrontation, is incredibly powerful. You're not telling her what to do. You're showing her who you are. You're giving her information and letting her decide how to use it. This preserves her sense of autonomy while still establishing your frame. She doesn't feel controlled. She feels informed. Here's another example. Let's say she wants to go on a girls' trip to some party destination. You're not comfortable with it. Wrong approach. Say nothing, act slightly weird about it, then either give permission resentfully or forbid it and look controlling. Both options are terrible. Better approach. When the topic of travel or partying comes up in early conversation, share your perspective naturally. I've always been pretty traditional about that stuff. When I'm with someone, I'm not really into the whole separate party vacations thing. Just not my scene. You've communicated a value. You haven't issued a command. If she agrees with this value, great. If she doesn't, you'll find out now before you're emotionally invested. Notice what you're not doing. You're not waiting until she's booked the trip to Cancun and then trying to stop her. You're not having a dramatic confrontation about trust and respect. You're setting the terms up front casually, as part of getting to know each other. The boundary exists before it's ever tested. Now let's talk about what happens when boundaries get crossed despite your best efforts, because it will happen. Maybe she didn't take your early signals seriously, maybe she forgot, maybe she's testing to see if you meant it. Whatever the reason, she does something that crosses a line you've established. This is where most men screw up again. They either explode, which we've covered, or they try to have a big serious talk about respect and boundaries and how hurt they are. And look, sometimes serious conversations are necessary, but often they backfire. They make you look weak. They make you look like you're seeking her validation. They put her in a position of power where she can either grant you what you want or refuse. You've become the petitioner. There's a better tool, strategic distance. When a boundary is crossed, you don't blow up. You don't launch into a speech. You simply become less available. You pull back emotionally. You're not cold or hostile. You're just occupied, busy, slightly less warm than usual. You create a gap. This works because women are incredibly attuned to emotional distance. She'll notice. She'll feel the shift, and she'll start trying to figure out what changed. Often, she'll know exactly what changed. She'll connect it to the thing she did, and now she has a choice. Close the gap by adjusting her behaviour, or let the distance grow. You haven't controlled her. You've given her information through your response. And you've demonstrated that your approval is conditional on her treatment of you. Let me be clear about what this isn't. This isn't silent treatment as punishment. This isn't manipulation. This is natural consequence. When someone does something that damages your trust or comfort, it's natural to feel less close to them. You're not manufacturing that distance. You're simply not hiding it. You're not pretending everything is fine when it isn't. You're letting your real state be visible. And here's the key. You do this without drama, without accusation, without discussion, unless she initiates it. If she asks what's wrong, you can be honest, briefly. I wasn't comfortable with how that situation went down. I'm just processing. That's it. You don't need a 2-hour conversation. You've communicated. Now you watch what happens next. Does she dismiss your feelings? Does she get defensive? Or does she try to understand and repair? Her response tells you everything you need to know. Now let's talk about a critical mistake men make. Trying to change women. This is epidemic. A man meets a woman who is clearly incompatible with his values. She parties every weekend. She has 100 male orbiters on Instagram. She's been in 3 relationships in the last year, and he thinks, but I really like her. I'll just set boundaries and she'll change. No, she won't. Not for you. Not because you asked nicely. Not because you explained your feelings. Women do not change their fundamental lifestyle because a man requests it. They change when they decide to change, and that decision comes from inside them, not from your relationship negotiations. This is where the concept of selection becomes crucial. Boundaries are not tools for reshaping incompatible people. Boundaries are filters for identifying compatible people. If your boundaries are clear from the start, you naturally filter out women who won't respect them. You attract women who already align with your values. The filtering happens automatically if you're honest about who you are. But many men do the opposite. They hide their standards to cast a wider net. They pretend to be more easygoing than they are because they're afraid of scaring women away. And then they end up with women who are genuinely incompatible, trying to retrofit boundaries onto relationships that were built on false pretenses. It's a recipe for misery. Here's a reframe that might help. Think of yourself as an employer, not an applicant. When you're hiring for a position, you have criteria. You have standards. You're evaluating candidates against your needs. You don't hire someone unqualified and then try to train them into competence. You find someone who already has the skills. Dating should work the same way. You have standards for the kind of relationship you want, the kind of woman who fits your life. Your job is to evaluate candidates against those standards, not to beg for a position, not to prove yourself worthy, to assess whether this person meets your criteria. This mindset shift changes everything. You stop chasing and start selecting. You stop hoping she'll change and start noticing whether she already fits. Let me address something that confuses a lot of men. The difference between boundaries and control. Boundaries are about you. What you will and won't accept in your life. What behavior you'll tolerate being around. Control is about her, trying to dictate what she does, where she goes, who she talks to. These might seem similar, but they're completely different. A boundary says, I'm not comfortable being in a relationship where my partner does X. If X happens, I'll need to reconsider the relationship. That's about you and your choices. Control says, you're not allowed to do X because I said so. That's about dominating her behavior. The first is healthy. The second is toxic. And here's the practical difference. Boundaries come with consequences that you enforce on yourself. If she crosses the boundary, you withdraw, you leave, you end the relationship. You don't force her to comply. You remove yourself from a situation that doesn't work for you. Control attempts to force her to comply without you having to make any difficult choices. You want her to stop the behavior, but you don't want to leave if she doesn't. So you try to pressure, guilt, manipulate her into doing what you want while you stay. That's not boundaries, that's coercion. A man with real boundaries says, this is what I accept. If you can't meet that, we're not compatible. No hard feelings, but I'll move on. That man is respected. Even if she disagrees with his standards, she respects that he has them and enforces them. A man without real boundaries says, I don't like when you do that. Please stop. Okay, you did it again. Please stop. Fine, I guess I'll just be upset. That man is not respected. He's a nag at best, a doormat at worst. Let me give you another practical application. Social media behavior. Let's say you're not comfortable with your girlfriend posting thirst traps or engaging flirtatiously with other men in comments. Again, you have every right to feel this way. Some men don't care. You do. Wrong approach. Wait until she posts something provocative, then start a fight about it. Interrogate who the guys commenting are. Go through her DMs. This is controlling behavior, and it will destroy the relationship. Right approach. Establish early what kind of relationship you're looking for. I'm pretty traditional in relationships. I'm not into the whole seeking online validation thing from either of us. I think once you're committed, that energy should be focused on each other. You've stated a value. You've included yourself in the standard. You're not singling her out. You're describing the kind of relationship you want. Now, if she's a woman who gets a lot of her self-esteem from Instagram likes, she'll probably think you're not compatible. Good. She's right. You're not. Better to find out now than 6 months in when you're arguing about her bikini photos. But if she's a woman who agrees with this value, she'll respect that you have standards, and you'll naturally align because you selected for compatibility instead of hoping for change. Here's something men don't understand about female psychology. Women respect men who have standards, even if they don't meet those standards themselves, even if they initially disagree with the standards. There's something attractive about a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to say it. Why? Because it signals strength. It signals options. It signals that he doesn't need to accept whatever comes his way. A man who tolerates anything is a man with no choices. A man who tolerates only certain things is a man who can afford to be selective, and selectivity implies value. Conversely, men who have no standards are not attractive. The man who says yes to everything, who accepts any treatment, who bends to every demand, he might seem nice, but he's not respected. Because his acceptance doesn't mean anything. He'd accept anything. His approval is worthless because it's given to everyone. Your standards are what make your acceptance valuable. When a woman meets your standards, she feels like she's earned something. She feels chosen by someone who doesn't choose everyone. That's a very different feeling than being accepted by someone who would accept anybody. Let me talk about handling conflicts that do arise. Not every boundary situation can be handled with subtle signals and strategic distance. Sometimes you need a direct conversation, but how you have that conversation matters enormously. First rule, stay calm. The moment you get emotional, angry, accusatory, pleading, you've lost. You've shown that her behaviour has destabilised you. You've given her power. She's now managing your emotions instead of examining her behaviour. Calm is power. Calm says, I'm not threatened by this. I'm addressing it because I choose to, not because I'm desperate. Second rule, be brief. Men think they need to explain everything, justify their feelings, provide evidence for why they're upset. No, over-explaining is weakness. It's seeking permission to feel how you feel. State your position clearly once and stop talking. I wasn't okay with what happened. I need you to understand that. Then silence. Let her fill the silence. Let her respond. Don't keep elaborating. Third rule, don't apologize for having standards. Men often undercut their own boundaries with phrases like, I know this probably sounds controlling, but, or I don't want to be that guy, but stop. You're apologizing before you've even stated your position. You're weakening yourself before the conversation starts. State your standard without apology. If it's reasonable, no apology is needed. Fourth rule, be willing to walk away. This is the ultimate foundation of all boundaries. If you're not willing to leave, you don't have boundaries. You have requests, and requests can be denied. A boundary without consequence is just noise. She has to believe, and you have to actually mean, that if this doesn't change, you'll exit. Not as a threat, just as a reality. Now, I want to address something important. Not everything requires confrontation. Some things are best handled through calibration, not conversation. You notice something minor, it bothers you. Instead of having a big talk, you just become slightly less available, slightly less warm. You see how she responds. If she calibrates, adjusts her behavior without being told, great. The system is working, no conversation needed. This is actually how healthy relationships operate most of the time. Both partners are constantly reading each other, adjusting, calibrating. It's a dance. The music changes, the steps adjust. Most of this happens below the level of explicit discussion. It's felt, not spoken. The problems start when one partner stops reading the signals. When she's doing something that bothers you, you're showing distancing, and she's not noticing, or not caring. That's when you escalate to conversation. But conversation should be escalation, not the starting point. Try calibration first. Many issues resolve themselves without a single direct word being spoken. Let me synthesize all of this into a framework you can actually use. Step 1. Know your values before you start dating. What do you accept? What do you reject? What are your deal breakers? Get clear on this independently of any specific woman. Write it down if you have to. This is your foundation. Step 2. Communicate those values early and indirectly. Through stories, through perspectives, through reactions to hypothetical situations. Don't wait for violations. Establish the terrain before she even has a chance to cross the line. Step 3. Select for compatibility, don't try to create it. If a woman's lifestyle fundamentally conflicts with your values, she's not the one, no matter how attractive she is, no matter how good the chemistry feels. Incompatibility discovered late is worse than compatibility discovered early. Step 4. When boundaries are tested, respond with calibration first. Distance, reduced availability. Let her feel the consequence and decide how to respond. Most minor issues resolve here without confrontation. Step 5. If calibration doesn't work, have a brief, calm conversation. State your position without apology. Don't over-explain. Don't get emotional. Then watch what happens. Step 6. Be willing to walk away. If boundaries are repeatedly violated despite clear communication, exit the relationship. Not with anger, with clarity. This person is not compatible with what you need. Staying would mean abandoning your standards, and a man who abandons his standards has nothing. Let me close with something that might seem counterintuitive. Setting boundaries properly actually makes relationships easier for her too. Women don't want to guess what's acceptable. They don't want to accidentally cross lines they didn't know existed. They don't want to be blindsided by explosions from nowhere. A man who communicates clearly, who sets expectations early, who responds proportionally to violations, he's actually easier to be with. She knows where she stands. She knows what matters to him. She can navigate the relationship with clarity instead of confusion. Your boundaries aren't just good for you. They're good for the relationship.